listening to the No Labels, No Limits podcast with best-selling author Sarah Box, where you get the inside scoop on the steps action takers and decision makers take to align their purpose to their principles and achieve their goals in business and life. We focus on the mantra, no labels, no limits, no excuses. And now, without further ado, please welcome your commanding coach with plenty of chutzpah and heart, Sarah Box.
Hey there, it's Sarah, your host of the No Labels, No Limits podcast, a podcast all about shedding our limiting labels and beliefs so that we can live fully and wholly as we are designed. And frankly, from a much more heart-centered perspective, because when we do that, we can inspire others to do the same and make the world just better for more of us. Our guest today is Mike Rosenkrantz. Now, Mike is the executive director of SoCal Adaptive Sports. I just always want to say Southern California, but it's really SoCal Adaptive Sports. He has an MBA and an MA with extensive management experience, which you will learn about as we have a conversation. He coaches numerous adaptive sports, including wheelchair basketball. And he's worked for various adaptive sports organizations, and he's co-founded 2 of them. And we're going to talk about one of those today also. But he started on this adaptive sports path in 2009 when he lived in India and then Nepal through 2016. So in today's conversation, I'm going to ask Mike about how living in India and Nepal shifted and shaped the path he travels today, the role adaptive sports has in promoting social inclusion or societal inclusion, examining the impact and power of social inclusion for people with different abilities or differing abilities, and then talk about some of the adaptive sports programs that he really is drawn towards, some of the impact of those. And finally, I'm going to dig into who are his mentors? Who are the people that he turns to when he needs some of his own stuff coming back to him? So with that, I'd like to formally welcome today's guest, Michael Rosenkrantz. Hi, Mike.
Hey, thanks, Sarah. Appreciate being on.
Well, it's fun. I've been looking forward to this. Now, Mike and I just actually met a week ago, if that, maybe a little bit longer. And he was so interesting that we offered him, why don't you hop on the podcast? I will tell you, you are the most action-oriented person who I've made that offer to, who's done it. And not only has done the onboarding stuff, but actually put that on their schedule in a quick turnaround. So that tells you something about who you are and how you show up, Michael. But would you start by sharing a bit about yourself and your background?
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. So I'm 66 years old and have 2 children, 2 wonderful adult children. And I've always been kind of interested in the social sector, I'd say. When I was 17 or younger, wanted to go in the Peace Corps, become a dentist in school and save the world, but got C- in chemistry. So that quickly abated to a political science major as an undergrad.
So for all you hopeful dentists, if it doesn't work out, poli-sci.
Yeah. So, that served me well. And I've worked for various nonprofits and municipalities. I was director of a regional HIV/AIDS organization for 8 years. Wow. I managed one of the oldest continually operating public markets in the U.S., the Lancaster Central Market in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. That's not Lancaster, it's Lancaster, as I was told in my interview. But that didn't last long, unfortunately. And I, it opened up an opportunity to go overseas, and something I'd wanted to do since, very young. And so the first time I went to India was in 2006. I went to business school with a guy from Kolkata, a guy named Ankar Kakar, became friends and, went and visited him and just fell in love with India. And then I had the opportunity to go overseas as a voluntary service overseas volunteer. And I had choices between going to Nigeria and working with a countrywide visual impairment organization, or India. And I chose India because, I just felt this draw. And I was placed with the Indian government, the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, the government of India. It was an autonomous body called National Trust. And they worked with 900 NGOs or nonprofits throughout the country. And it sounded great because one of the things I wanted to do was travel. And this job, in this position, I would be doing all kinds of workshops, capacity building workshops, like fundraising and marketing and all other kinds of stuff. And I thought, great, I'm going to do this. And while I was in India, so I lived with a joint family. There were the grandparents, their 3 children, and then their children. So I had my own floor. It was big enough I could play basketball in there, which was really cool. And I was coaching standing able-bodied basketball at the New Delhi YMCA. And after a couple of years, came home for a visit and met these guys from Wheelchair Athletes Worldwide. And their mission is to bring sports wheelchairs and do clinics, wheelchair basketball. And I said, I live in India. Why don't you guys come and do your first clinic there? And they did. And so that got me started on the adapted sports path, which was great because I love sports. And it was interesting. The NBA was just coming into India at that time too. So, made some connections there. And it was great. So after India, 2012, came home in February. My assignment ended, wanted to go back to India. Couldn't get a visa because of whatever. But I had an opportunity to go to Nepal. So I went in either June or July, and I ended up spending 4 years in Nepal doing various assignments. A whole bunch of different stuff, not focused on people with disability, but, I made connections, of course. Before I went to Nepal, I made connections and, started building wheelchair basketball in Nepal. So I do that on my weekends. And that was great. And then came back to the US in 2016. And was able to be an assistant coach at the University of Arizona with the women's wheelchair basketball team, because one of the guys from Wheelchair Athletes Worldwide, Pete Hughes, he was the wheelchair basketball coach for women at University of Arizona. He's now the athletic director for adapted sports, which is great. So I did that, lived in Tucson, helped to co-found an organization, Southern Arizona Adaptive Sports. Moved on to North Carolina and worked for a place called Bridge to Sports and coached and ran a school program, which was great. And then, wanted to be closer to my parents who are older Americans. And so ended up moving back to California, where I'm from, 3 years ago. So that's a little bit of my path.
That's very circuitous and kind of, I can see like the dots as you're talking. I'm going, okay, that's a dot, like those fake maps they show where here's the airplane going and there's dots. And now Michael's over here and now he's here. But my question that comes from all of that is twofold. Were there any specific lessons or takeaways from working with the communities in either Nepal or India that influence how you work with communities now and the work you do today here in the States? Yeah.
Sorry. I tend to just talk. So, growing up in the US, there's certain mores, and there's the culture that you kind of try to fit into. And for me, I think that kind of suppressed my personality and my ability to be more extroverted. So when I went overseas, it was like this weight kind of lifted. Because, obviously I'm not going to do something really stupid, although I'm sure I did many stupid things while I was overseas. But it also relieves this kind of having to fit in a certain way. And so, I related back to how I dance. And there was just a dance this past weekend. And when I dance, it's very free form and flowing. It's not like when people were doing kind of a line dance at this dance I went to, I was like, I'm not doing that. It's more all over the place, jumping around. And so being in India and Nepal allowed me to be more of a dancer, I think, in my own kind of way, not in any one saying, this is the way you have to dance. And so I use that a lot. I think it helped me to be my more authentic self. I mean, I remember someone asked me, oh, are you going overseas to find yourself? And I said, what a ridiculous question. It's not that I was going to find myself, but I think I did find a large part of who I was really meant to be during this lifetime. And so I approach things, I can be serious as a coach, I'm like, come on, get out there and run. But, can also be a little bit goofy and you definitely use humor. I mean, I think that's a really important lesson. In India and Nepal, I mean, people laugh at things that I don't know that I would laugh at, but nevertheless, there's a little bit of this lightheartedness, I think, which was a really good lesson for me. I think, or I know, something I've been working on my whole life is just patience. It's, as you know, by how I responded to you, it's like, I need to do this now. And so, being in India and Nepal, I mean, I spoke a bit of the language, Ali. So I had to be more patient and, people didn't always understand what I was trying to say. I mean, people still don't understand what I'm trying to say, but, so definitely patience was something that, I learned. And I think also it taught me to think, in a very different way. It's not, there's vertical, horizontally. I mean, I'm kind of more a little bit all over the place, but I think it serves me well because I'm able to kind of think and see things a little more deeply and kind of say, this is not the only way. I mean, working with a government office in India, it's really interesting, or just going to the post office in India was quite the experience. But it's like, the American way, Mike's way is not the only way, and it's somewhat trying to lessen ego a little bit too, and say, there's so many ways, but that's a constant thing that is with me, and I'm trying to learn. So many different lessons. And a lot of the people that I work with are people with, developmental or intellectual disability. So there is a certain amount or a lot of patience, that you have to have, and you have to be able to explain things. I mean, very differently. Someone who's nonverbal, are you getting what I'm saying? Not, as my colleague says to me, don't keep repeating things, let people process. So those are the many things that I've learned, and that I'm continuing to learn on a daily basis as I coach sports. But I'm so, even though I didn't go as a dentist, which is probably a good thing because I probably would have hated it. India and Nepal really kind of opened me up, and I do want to go overseas again. There's no doubt about that, because I think you can get in kind of a rut, and there's this group thing kind of thing if you're in the same place for your whole life. So when I was thinking about this the other day, I'm loving building SoCal Adaptive Sports. It's something, I just love it. I guess I'm somewhat of an entrepreneur at heart, although a business with a human face, right? Nonprofit. But I don't want to get too comfortable either. There's a lot more to explore. I think there's a lot more to do in life. And so, over time, I'll take these lessons and then hopefully learn many more and be able to work in other parts of the world too. Because it's such a tapestry. I mean, so many ways of doing things, you got to be open, right? And that's not so easy, but I try.
It's not always that easy, but it's always possible.
Yeah, I think
you talked about the whole ego piece, right? That That's like one of the big barriers. It's like, no, it has to be this way. Really? Since when? Someone else has a good way of doing it, or a different way of doing it.
Yeah, I think that just causes a lot of things that become problems in life. I mean, we could talk about the whole political scene in the US, but I think, you get a little bit self-righteous and say, my way is the only way. And then you can't hear what other people have to say. And then you're just split. And that's kind of the end of the relationship. So I think,
and that's so painful to even contemplate that, right? Because it's such a lie. We can't split. We are all like this human thing together. We just parcel it out. No labels, no limits. Hello. So,
yeah, that's but it's hard, I mean,
it's hard.
We all have prejudices just from the environments we've grown up in. And, but it's like, how do you kind of lessen those? A really good thing for me, I just want to, sorry, off topic a little bit, but I do some tutoring too of kids, which I really love. And I've been working with this mixed race family. And it's just been so good for my heart to do that. And I told the mom the other day, I just love your kids, but it's helped me quite a bit to see more of, we're kind of very similar and we want very similar things. And it doesn't matter what your race is, or your background. It's, how do we reach some kind of common ground? And I think, but it's experiencing that is, really helpful to me, definitely. So
do you feel like that opens your heart differently when you can experience something in that way?
Well, I think that's the whole, going back to India and Nepal, being a white male in those societies, I was very much in the minority, and it just opens you up more to, the possibilities, the opportunities that exist. And it doesn't matter, what you look like or what your ability level is or anything like that. It's more, how do we find some common ground so that we can engage and, have a relationship. So
I want to talk, if you would, for a few minutes about the organization you started in Southern California, because you're fairly young. Your organization is fairly young. We're close to the same age, so I think
I'm young too.
Well, you're fairly young. I'm too. Just saying. But what is its origin story? I know you shared a little bit of that before, but like you could have come back and been near your parents and done something entirely different, right? So why that organization at that time?
Well, I don't know that I could have done something totally different. I think, this path of kind of Mother India. And, my sister's been there numerous times. My children spent 6 months there. So we all have this kind of affinity or something about India, and talk about guru, right? The guru I kind of follow. My son's a monk, the Self-Realization Fellowship from the East, so. So I think this is my path, for the rest of my life. I came back and I had gotten a job in the area where I'm living now, the Coachella Valley in southeast of LA. And, it was great. Close to my parents, close to my children, and doing this job. But, I found that the organization was way too limiting for me. And then COVID hit, and then, there was a split, which was actually fortuitous, because it was really time for me to kind of do my, kind of this path. So I got together a group of people, and my job ended March. In April, I had a group of people and we were already chatting, right? April of 2020, and incorporated in May. So I knew that I wanted to do this, and I really love, networking and collaborating. I mean, I don't want to I never want to do things by myself because, there's so many resources out there, and, there's a lot more power in collaborating, of course, and partnering. So it's all kind of, even though, we started during COVID, it's all worked out, and, we're on this growth path because of the partners we've been able to collaborate with, like Desert Recreation District Adaptive. The staff member there, Kendra Smith, who, great friend, great person. She said, sure, let's collaborate. And they have gyms and everything. I partnered with the city of Riverside, which is 70 miles away. They've been great, partnered with a group called Friends of the Desert Mountains, who leads our hikes. And so everything just, the more that I can feel this internally, the more I know that this is the right path. I'll tell you, this morning, right, I get an email from this group I've never heard of, and they said, we're giving you $2,500. I said, what? And I wrote to them, and someone anonymously nominated us in Riverside, where I had done a adaptive sports camp for youth. I was like, oh, okay, sure, that will be helpful. And I, that kind of stuff, it's not, obviously you need money to run an organization, but it's more, as I wrote to the director of the organization, I said, it just brings tears to my eyes, because I feel like we are making an impact, and, people, this parent is appreciative of that. There wasn't anything in Riverside, and now, we're starting to build some adaptive sports so that anyone who wants to can participate. So it's, I think throughout my career, you have to look at kind of signposts, right? And I'm probably better at this now because I am, older than I was when I was younger, when, you'd fight things, right? Instead of, as we were talking, just kind of going and seeing. I'm still a little pushy. I was once called you're like a bull in a china shop. But I think it's more, I am able to step back a little bit, not push in a certain way, and then push in a maybe a little bit softer way, which is something I've been told I have to do. So,
well, and it sounds like you're able to acknowledge what you're receiving, right? From that person, from the impact you made. It's clear that it lights you up, right? It's like validation from the world that you're making a difference.
Well, that's what I wrote to my my cousin this morning. There's the what are they? The love languages. Those, yeah. So the 5 love languages, right? And one of them is, words of affirmation, which that's not really me so much, but in this case, it did feel very reaffirming that we're on the right path, and that people are appreciating it, which, that's important. You don't know in life, right? Like, are you doing the right thing? Should you do this? Should you do that? And then, this anonymous person says, hey, you're doing the right thing. It's like, okay, we're doing the right thing.
I think it's helpful also because it's an opportunity for you to say, yep, that's the right direction at this time for that location. And a year from now, someone may say, we need that plus this. You never know, but just to be open to that, like you said, the signposts along the way, so you can hear and listen, adapt, see what fits for you as an organization and for the people that you're serving.
Yeah.
With some humility built in.
Well,
but I do.
Absolutely. It's not, I really try to go this philosophy of, it's not about me, right? It's about others and what we can do to create more opportunities. In my case, for adaptive sports and other things, I think as you lessen, it's about me, and I have to get this car, I have to get this house and all that, I think your life opens up more, and it opens up more. As I said to my son, I just feel like there's more of this spiritual kind of opening up too, I always think like I'm not doing this work for me. There's something else that's kind of guiding me. So I try to live my life that way, and some of the times I do, and sometimes I don't, of course.
So here we are in the human condition, right? Sometimes better than others. Let's talk a little bit about the role of adaptive sports in promoting societal inclusion and social justice. And I'm going to stop at that. I mean, talk a little bit about that.
So my feeling is, there are the UN development goals, and goal 10 is about, equity and inclusion. I mean, in countries, across countries. And so I kind of feel like there's a connection to that. Play equity. LA 84 Foundation talks about play equity. It's a very much a social justice issue is the way I see it. So it's, the sports is used as kind of the vehicle, right, to create, more of an inclusive society. Because if we in the able-bodied world can see the barriers that we've put up and can start lessening those barriers or eliminating those barriers, then, more people with a variety of abilities can participate. And, sometimes it's really simple things. We work with a few people with visual impairment, and, why is that barrier right there on the sidewalk? Right. I mean, you see it a lot more in India and Nepal, although they're making strides too, India more than Nepal. But so how do we see things differently so that, we can say, hey, there's a barrier there. How do we eliminate that? One of the things I do, which is weird, but whatever, I go into handicapped bathrooms and I look at them and go, this is not really, and handicapped is not a great word, but, this bathroom is not overly accessible. I mean, I did that a lot in India and Nepal, and it was just a horror show. But I think it's really important that we all kind of, again, going with this kind of visual impairment analogy, I mean, we all have blinders on, or whatever. And it's like, how do we open these up so that, we can kind of see or feel or touch what other people I'm kind of feeling? I think, I know that working with people with a variety of abilities has opened me up more. I mean, there's still a whole lot more, that I don't see or feel, but it certainly has opened me up a lot more, it really pisses me off when people park in the handicapped parking spaces and, I mean, I won't describe the incident that happened to me in North Carolina, but, it was like, get out of here. You don't need to be here. But it does give you, a lot more empathy. So, that's a whole nother lesson, right? From living in India and Nepal and working with people with disability, that kind of empathy. Even through the energy work, which I was telling you about that I'm doing, in my last session, it just kind of opened me up to say, okay, don't be impatient with people. There are other ways, obviously, to look at things and what are they going through, and so you have to be so careful. But it is the human condition. It's not so easy.
It's not. And then I try to remember too that some of the challenges we face are invisible. So because I totally relate to someone popping into a reserved handicapped or easier access parking, they don't even have plates or any placard, right? And I'm thinking, what's wrong with you? I'm thinking, I don't know what's wrong with them. And maybe they're battling something I have no idea about and they just forgot. So why don't you your job's not to police the world, box, back off. But to recognize that there are a lot of hidden things that people deal with, I
think that's a really good point. And it's interesting that you should say that, because So it's just World Disability Day, International Day of Persons with Disability on December 3rd. And the theme was about, some disabilities are invisible, and we don't know what's going on with other people. So it's important to keep in mind, especially in this very stressful kind of world that we live in. So
people are a little touchy, so it's good to go, okay, this is what I think is happening. And the reality is probably something way different.
Yeah.
Just why don't you let it go and just assume the best and don't stress them out worse than they are, probably. You're right. People are touchy and they're quicker to fly off the handle, I think, because of that. So it's a good practice on empathy for me. I just go, thank you for giving me an opportunity for practicing empathy.
Yeah, people are angels, aren't they? Even though you think they're devils, if you kind of look at things a little differently. So
we can be. But I wanted to ask you for an example, because you've been in this work for a long time in different venues, different locations. But what are a couple of examples of the impact of the work on an individual? Like, what have you seen as a result of someone being included in a different way than maybe they've ever had experience before?
Well, here's an example from last week. So we just started our school-based program, which is called Sports for Everybody. And essentially we go into schools and, we let students try a number of different adaptive sports. So we put all students, in a sports chair, or they're playing sitting volleyball, or they're playing boccia, which is the Paralympic kind of equivalent of bocce. So last week, we did our first couple of sessions, and they were just terrific. And, I know that the teachers, the coaches, the administrators who were there, were really appreciated. We're going to schedule a lot more. But so one young woman came in a power chair, and it was her birthday. So we sang happy birthday to her. And then when we divided the students up into groups to participate in these different activities, which I just described, I said to her, do you want to play? And she said, no. I was like, oy, this is why we're doing this. So, by the end of the 2 hours, she participated for 2 hours. She was in a sport wheelchair. I said to her, you want to play sharks and minnows? She said, yes. And I was pushing her, and she had this biggest smile on her face, right? So that's a 2-hour day. You see the smiles are a great example. This child's included with able-bodied people with, disability too. Longer term though, go back to my North Carolina experience. Yes, here's another really fun story. So when I was in North Carolina, I used to go to the spina bifida clinics at University of North Carolina in Duke. And one day when I was at UNC, a little girl not walked in, but she was in a wheelchair with her mom. And I said, hey, you want to play sports? And her mom said, she doesn't play sports. She can't even catch a ball. She had some vision stuff too. I said, just come out and try it. I'd say to people, just come out and try it once. Didn't hear from her, called her mom on the phone and said, come on, just bring her out to our wheelchair basketball practice. The child came out, and just started crying, in the gym. And I said to one of the other athletes, go take this girl and push her around the gym. And they did. And by the end of the day, end of the practice, I said, hey, you're going to come back? She said, yes. And so this was 4 years ago, I guess. So I've looked at pictures on Facebook, and she's part of this wheelchair basketball team, right? Another child I know in North Carolina who started playing, and they used to drive 2.5 hours to get to practice. So her grandmother told me, her grades, her attention really improved. Her math was, getting much better. So, for me, I played sports all my life, and sports are a way to learn life lessons, whether it's teamwork, whether it's leadership. it's the same for anyone. And if you don't have the opportunity to participate, then you're not learning those life lessons. You're kind of sitting on the sidelines and the field is not level. So, by leveling the playing field, removing barriers, allowing opportunities to participate. So children, will develop like any other child, right? Depending on their capacity. So, sport is a way to lead a full life. Whether you prefer individual sport or whether you like to play team sport, things that I observe on a daily basis is, it is about physical health, of course, but it's also about social and emotional health. And so, I'm often telling the athletes, this is not the time to hug and have a love fest. It's time to play basketball. Let's go, but it's all part of it, right? One of our, or actually 3 of the athletes we're working with now, they're going to college. One young woman, she's at UCLA in a 2-year program, a young woman with intellectual disability. And, I could see through some of the things that she's done with us, like, so we do a special trip to a place called Pathfinder Ranch, and one of the activities is to climb a rock wall. Well, this young woman came with us, and, I'm not climbing to the top. She climbed all the way to the top. And her mother said to me, I can't believe she's done this, right? So you learn about confidence and, I can do as opposed to I can't do because the opportunities are available to play. So it's, everyone wants to participate in the wonderful things that society has to offer. And, we're doing such a disservice by not offering a full array of activities for everyone, no matter what their ability or who they are, what their beliefs are. Parks and rec departments, you can drive a few miles and go play sports, but they don't all have adapted sports. So one of the things that we've been doing is working with different municipalities to start programs. And, it's working. It's slow. You have to be very persistent in this work. But nevertheless, I'm seeing things opening up. So you can imagine if all the various parks and rec departments, throughout the U.S., I'm working on Southern California, have adaptive sports, then you remove the barrier of transportation for people with, disability. And then it's like, yeah, we've opened things up so much. So I think it's all possible. It just, it takes time, changing mindsets, saying people with disability, they just want to play like everyone else. And you don't have to treat people differently, maybe a little more kinder, maybe a little more empathy, but, offer the activities so that everyone can play.
Mike, it begs the question for me. We talk about how it impacts the athlete themselves, but I'm wondering about their teammates who do not participate with those same kinds of adaptive challenges or abilities. How do they change? So someone who maybe is playing that sport alongside them who is able, what changes have you seen in the team as a whole?
So our program Sports for Everybody in the schools, it is, at least for me, it's about how do we create a lot more inclusion? How do we open up people's eyes? So last week when we did the program, I asked the question, how many of you have watched the Paralympics? And maybe a couple of students raised their hands. So I think, experiencing being in a wheelchair or sitting down and playing sitting volleyball or playing bocce, being blindfolded and with your offhand, helps the able-bodied students to appreciate, I can play with my friend. I may just have to do things a little bit differently. So, that's the kind of, we want to create those kind of friendships. I watched a commercial it was yesterday. Yeah, I was watching a presentation and, it shows a young man with a basketball and it shows another child in the house with a wheelchair. And, by the end of the commercial, they're together and they're playing basketball together, which, is very possible. you don't have to be in a wheelchair to play wheelchair basketball, but certainly you can play with your friend, right? Your friend maybe can't use their legs, but they can still shoot a basketball. They can still pass. They can still get down court, by pushing. And so, it's very possible. One of the places that I worked with in India was this inclusive school. And I had never seen an inclusive school before. And it was just terrific. All these kids just want to play basketball. They're all playing basketball. Some are standing, some are in wheelchairs, some are using walkers, but hey, we can all play. So it does, talking about that empathy piece, I think it creates a lot more empathy for people and helps them to start seeing things a little bit differently. So that's why, programs like the Sports for Everybody and other organizations are doing it, which is great. University of Michigan is doing it. University of Arizona wants to start doing a school-based program. It's just so important. So again, we open ourselves up and can see the world a little bit differently so that everyone is included.
Okay, I'm going to switch gears on you here for a minute.
Okay.
And I'm going to ask you to share with us a little bit about when you face challenges or not, but when you're in a growth or transition or change time, who do you turn to for your mentorship and guidance and support? Because people turn to you for their support. So who do you turn to?
Yeah. So I think, the mentoring or mentoree piece is really important. I've learned to really appreciate my elders, people even older than me. Oh my gosh. I have, my dad's 93, and I really, we don't always agree, right? But I just appreciate how he's lived his life. My mom passed away 6 months ago, and they were married 67 years, something like that, but he's doing okay. He's got sports to watch on TV, so he's doing okay. There's his brother, so Michael, Jerry, and his wife, Sheila, they've, I get a really strong heart feeling just even talking about them. They're people who I just, I really, really appreciate, have a lot of good life experience. And, my uncle especially gives me a lot of, his ideas. He was very successful in business, the private sector, but nevertheless, there's still lessons. And then I think it's really important to have deep friendships. It's great to have a lot of friends. But I have these incredible friends who, my cousin Mark, who he's a dear friend, it's not about family. My friend Beth, my friends Robert and Simone, who really, really just help me and can say to me, Mike, you're off your rocker, dude, and then, it's interesting, people don't have to be older than you. My son, certainly, he's a monk with a self-realization fellowship. I mean, he's just a wise soul, and, he'll edit what I write, and he has this ability to think about things, quite differently because of the life, he's leading. And so it's really, really helpful. But I try to hear, I'm trying harder to hear what people say to me. And of course, the athletes that I work with, I mean, if I really not sit, but, be on the court with them and listen, there's a lot of wise things that they say. And, many times they just crack me up, but it's just, yeah, I mean, I think it's just about listening, to others. And, I find other stories so fascinating. I mean, all of us have a story, no matter who we are, right? So I read the New York Times, my news, sorry. But, when they highlight someone who has passed away, I'll read the story and go, oh my God, I've never heard of this person and they just did so much with their lives. But it's more about, everyone has a story, no matter who you are. And so if you're willing to take time to listen, you can learn. And I think that helps in me, right? And I mean, that definitely helps me. So it's funny, you can think of people as mentors, but I think anyone can be a mentor, to you if you listen, right? If you hear what they're saying.
Those are wise words, my friend. Wise words.
Maybe.
So last question for you, because I can imagine some folks listening to this, maybe they're in a town not near one of the big universities, but something you said clicked for them and they're thinking, I need to do something in my community because this needs to be here. What would you suggest for them? Like, should they come to you? Are there resources? Or what's the first step you might help them or encourage them to take?
Yeah, people are more than welcome to contact me. And I know people throughout the country, in other countries too, but in this country, so adaptive sports, it is a growing field. The Chamber of Commerce, I would say, for adaptive sports is a group called Move United. And they're just terrific. They can tell you about activities everywhere, but, sometimes I do know, I always try to connect people because I meet people obviously from other places in my travels and I try to connect them with organizations. So, go to Move United or you can ask me and I'll connect you. More colleges are starting to do competitive adaptive sports. I think there's about 30 in the country now that, wheelchair basketball and wheelchair tennis, and University of Arizona, they started golf and track and field. What else? And hopefully, a lot more stuff will start. In California, there's San Diego State University is offering competitive adaptive sports, and UCLA is really trying, and I'm working on some places, hoping to get them going. But yeah, feel free to come to me. I'm more than happy to help connect you with people. So, it's SoCalAdaptiveSports.org or Mike at SoCalAdaptiveSports.org. So either way, you can find us. We're on Facebook too. And yeah, please, we just want to create a lot more opportunities and create, do our little piece in creating more inclusion. I just want to say one other thing. So I had read this great thing once, and the person, I can't even remember who it was saying, we all think we're doing such really big things, right? But we're like grains of sand, of course, in this whole big universe. So the message was, you work on your own postage stamp size portion, right? Probably less of the universe. And that's okay. Just do that. So I'm working on my postage stamp size portion of whatever it is.
Fair enough. That's true. But if enough of us are working on our own postage size stamps, it starts to have an expanding impact.
And it is. It definitely is. But, you don't need to save the world, right? You can do your thing in your community and hook up with other people in your community who are doing positive things. And that's right. It grows. It grows. And
that good energy and positive output just fuels itself as well. So, Mike, I want to thank you for being a guest on the No Labels, No Limits podcast. I was so glad to have met you and super excited that you were so quick on the draw. This won't air until next year, 2023. So as fast as you were, we'll see you in 2023. And listeners, by habit to look in the show notes. We have links to Mike and how to connect with him and his organization, or just him. But check it out. They're doing some cool stuff. So with that, thank you and have a great week ahead.
You've been listening to the No Labels, No Limits podcast with best-selling author, change agent, and strategic vision coach, Sarah Box. You can grab the show notes and find out how to work with Sarah at sarahbox.com/No Labels, No Limits podcast. We'd love this podcast to reach as many people as possible. So please remember to rate, leave a 5-star review, and share the podcast with someone you think would get value from this conversation. Until next time, keep taking those daily action steps to align your purpose to your principles and achieve your goals in business and life.